The honourable member for Fadden now has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Thank the member for Casey. I rise to respond to the Minister for Defence's sixth update to the House. He made it very clear in March 2011 that he would seek to make timely, relevant responses on combat operations in Afghanistan. He made 5 of those ministerial statements in 2011 to his credit, and he continues to keep his word in keeping the Parliament and indeed the nation up to date with the prosecution of those operations. I note last time, Minister, we spoke, the Speaker had changed, with Speaker Jenkins seeking to play a more fulsome role in the House. It is nice to see that the Speaker didn't change this time, Minister, that you spoke. The Coalition is very pleased to respond to the Minister of Defence on Afghanistan, this being our first time in 2012. As the Minister rightly knows, the Coalition offers wide, deep and lasting bipartisan support for the prosecution of combat operations and wider operations in Afghanistan and the Middle East area of operations. This bipartisan support is not conditional, except on the national interest. It's given freely based on mutual respect and trust. We do acknowledge, though, and we've stated conditionally and completely, that it's not a blank cheque for the government. We do expect to be kept updated, both publicly through the House and privately through the conventions of the Minister-Shadow Minister relationship, and I acknowledge the Minister does both of those well. The Coalition will be looking to return to Afghanistan this year, 2012, as part of our annual due diligence as an opposition, and I know the Minister will offer every assistance in this task. It's a critical year for combat operations, as the Minister has well highlighted, as we look towards a metric-based, commander's judgment-led withdrawal by 2014. Crucial decisions will need to be made, and we'll be looking for very strong leadership from the Minister during the year, especially as the May NATO ISAF Leader Summit in Chicago draws near. I note the Minister has outlined 3 key decisions he's looking for at the May Summit, namely the reaffirmation of the Lisbon security transition commitments, namely the transition to Afghan-led security by 2014. Secondly, to agree the size and the shape of the Afghan National Security Force required to maintain those security, and of course the broad, enduring commitment from the international community to Afghanistan post-transition. Consequently, it will be incumbent upon the Minister, post the May meeting, to update the House on some areas of national interest that connect to and form a wider part of those 3 key commitments. I note also in 2013 the nation will be entering an election, so this anticipated, well-heralded and crucial transition will be undertaken during quite a challenging time of our national history in terms of an election coming up, and it's incumbent on both sides of Parliament to ensure that the priority is accorded at the highest level to the transition arrangements, and the Coalition pledges itself to ensure that every assistance will be given during that time. Key areas we'll be looking for in terms of national interest include an actual metric-based rules for Australia's withdrawal for the bulk of its combat force. What do those rules look like? What do the conditions look like? What are the key areas of the Commander's judgment required to be? We note from previous discussions with the Minister that of the 30-odd forward operating and patrol bases, less than 10 are now manned, with the majority being manned permanently by Afghan National Army and Police, with Australians using extensively mobile mentoring patrols. Thus, our transition is already occurring across Uruzgan. We're keen to understand the likely force disposition that will remain in theatre post-2014 and their anticipated roles. Note the Coalition will continue to provide bipartisan support for a force retention post-2014, including reconstruction, training, force protection, overwatch and indeed an offensive SOTG, Special Operations Task Group presence. I note the Minister continuing to look at areas of the training at the artillery school, which Australian gunners continue to run, which we think is a fine initiative, as we also agree with the Minister in terms of joining with Her Majesty's militaries from Great Britain in looking to assist with the military academy in Afghanistan. We're keen to understand the likely aid and related provincial reconstruction task activities and the quantums. We're keen to understand the nature of any proposed bilateral agreement between Australia and Afghanistan, as intimated by the Prime Minister on the 21st of November 2011, and the extent to which Australia will be committed in terms of assistance post-2014. The Coalition believes strongly that the future of the Al Manhad Air Base in Dubai should be retained, and every effort should be made to work with the Government of the United Arab Emirates to achieve that. Clearly, the stability of the governance at provincial and national levels, including the challenges and opportunities that presents, is also of some interest. We believe our parliament offers considerable opportunity for our parliament to assist nations of the world, including Afghanistan, in setting up their parliaments, including the processes, the procedures and the governance arrangements. And likely we're keen to understand Australia's preparedness to commit forces to restore stability in Afghanistan post-2014 if required, and what that will look like. I note the Minister's confidence that it can be expected that Uruzgan province will transition to Afghan-led security force control in the third tranche, expected, give or take, mid-2013. I praise the Minister's confidence, and I note it's built on the blood, sweat and tears of our faithful Australian military that have risen to every task the government of the day has set them. In saying so, I thank the fine men and women of MTF-3, based around ostensibly the 2nd Battalion, the Royal Australian Regiment, and I wish the lads and lasses from the 9th Battalion, the bulk of MTF-4, the best as they continue in the fine tradition. The Coalition is under no illusion concerning the tough road to transition. 4 of our fine men and women were killed in action and 10 wounded in action from green on blue attacks alone in 2011, as other nations suffered the same tragedies. It will be a difficult time, no question about it. I note the Minister updating that 1,200 suspects were detained between August 2010 and early February this year, with 159 transferred to either Afghan or US custody and 11 detainees who were released and recaptured. I also note there were 71 allegations of detainee mismanagement, and none have been found to have substance. I think it's fairly clear that the Australian people can see is that the bottom line, our enemy is trying to exploit what they see as our weaknesses, our humanity, our rules of engagement, our belief in the rule of law, things that we as a parliament see as great national strength. I note that we are above our enemy and have a greater moral set and a greater, stronger value that will continue to investigate allegations where they're raised. But our enemy should know that raising an allegation is not an easy path to them leaving custody and getting back to their way of life in trying to assist the Taliban in their fight against Australian forces and the wider ISAF. We'll continue to investigate allegations, but we will not let them be a crutch to our enemy as they are seeking for it to be. Minister, I'm pleased after 12 months of continually asking, you have finally dispatched an interrogation capability, 18 months after the military put up a cabinet submission. I note you've deployed 9 people, sir, including 6 interrogators. But if my maths serves me right, with 1,200 detainees over, let's call it 20 months, that's about 60 detainees a month, on average 2 per day. As a former trained interrogator, interrogations might take 4 or 5 days. If there's only 6 interrogators, let's put them on a 12-hour shift, that's only 3 interrogators available at any one time, with 2 detainees coming in every day on average. And if an interrogation took 4 or 5 days, you might have 3 interrogators working across 10 detainees. I think our interrogators might be stretched. And Minister, there may be room for adding a few more interrogators into the order of battle. I note the increase in terms of initial screening from 96 hours to include 3 days plus another 3 days, if deemed necessary, to complete the investigation, which is in line with ISAF partners, which the Coalition supports completely. Minister, I note the update in terms of inquiry reports, that we are still waiting for 15 reports from 32 soldiers killed in action, and I note the key areas that you've outlined to ensure that is being restored, in terms of a senior army lawyer to head up the Commission of Inquiry, plus an admin chief of staff. We also note, and we agree, the Coalition does not expect all reports to be publicly released, but we do demand that the families have provided them expeditiously and their views are considered in terms of wider release. We also hope that a clear chain of command is established to allow families who are waiting for these 15-odd reports, some from 2010, are kept fully informed as to the delays and what the military is doing to overcome them. Minister, there is an issue of taxation that needs to be addressed. By way of history, the International Campaign Allowance was legislated in 2001 by the previous government to remunerate defence members for warlike service. It's designed to compensate members for ostensibly, the environmental and dreadful factors of combat operations in specific international campaigns such as Slipper, as in Operation Slipper, Mr Speaker. International campaign allowance is zoned according to 3 locations in the Middle East: Afghanistan, service in Iraq, which has subsequently ceased, and then in the wider maritime environment. The practice is providing tax exemption to ADF members on warlike service. It's been around for 60-odd years, including Korea and Malaya, and is well understood and well supported. Under Section 23AD of the Income Tax Assessment Act 1936, ADF members serving on warlike operations are exempt from tax on salaries and allowances they earn. For soldiers who are wounded in action, the tax exemption extends to periods of hospitalisation, regardless of the location of hospital or the duration of hospital. The challenge is, Minister, that if a soldier is hospitalised, but for reasons of mental health or great concern for family, seeks to leave hospital but to go back every single day to receive the care that they would otherwise receive, they are then penalised by virtue of the Tax Act. Nothing to do with the Minister or indeed elements of defence, by the Tax Act, because they have chosen to leave hospital. Even though they should be hospitalised, but for their own mental health or their own family care, they've made a decision not to be. It's the Coalition's contention that something needs to change there to allow circumstances where the Minister can approve the continuation of tax-exempt status to allowances in such circumstances, so that soldiers aren't penalised if they should be in hospital, but for whatever care arrangements have been decided to go home, but to continue to come back and forth. Likewise, Minister, members who undertake escort duties for wounded soldiers or killed in action do so as a primary role, and they are aware of this before they deploy. But when an escort leaves an area of operations, they're no longer provided warlike service, and therefore they don't receive the tax exemptions again, even though they are instructed and ordered to leave the combat operation to escort a wounded or indeed a mate who's been killed in action home. I note that on returning there is a range of allowances in terms of travelling allowances paid, which is about half of what they would receive in terms of the taxable amount if they were serving on operations. Again, it's the Coalition's contention that there should be an option for the Minister to overrule and make a determination in that area whereby it would allow those on escort duties or other duties as permitted to continue to receive the allowances because they are operating under orders, and if in cases such as bringing wounded or soldiers killed in action home, that can also be taken into consideration. Minister, I'll leave those with you. I note they are issues of taxation, not of defence, and they are outside your purview, but I'm sure with great goodwill on both sides we can seek to address some of those issues. There's one further issue, Minister, I'd like to raise. I think it's actually time for our nation to rise as one and begin to jointly own the support for the hundreds of our wounded warriors who are returning to our shores. I think it's time for our country to seek within itself and find something similar to what the British are doing through the establishment of their Help for Heroes type foundation. By way of background, the Help for Heroes raises money to support members of the UK Armed Forces who've been wounded in the service of their country. It's a UK-based charity specifically set up to help wounded servicemen and women returning from Afghanistan and Iraq. It's actually founded by Bryn and Emma Parry. Bryn was an ex-serviceman in October 2007. It's strictly non-political and it's non-critical. They simply want to help wounded servicemen and women. They want to assist people who are currently serving or who have served in the armed forces and their dependents. They want to promote and protect the health of those who've been wounded or injured while serving in the armed forces through the provision of facilities, equipment or services. They want to make grants to other charities to assist members of the armed forces and their dependents. They consider anyone who volunteers to serve in time of war, knowing that they may risk all, is a hero. And I think in that respect they are right. They believe these are ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and some of them are living with the consequences of that service, and indeed their families are for the rest of their life. Help for Heroes asks supporters in the UK to simply do their bit, to show these extraordinary young men and women that they are cared for by us. Help for Heroes has so far raised over £125 million, 184 million Australian dollars. Of that, £107 million has gone directly to help injured men and women of the UK Armed Forces, including rehab complexes at Headley Court, money for combat stress, adaptive adventure training, extension of the Northern Wales Medical Centre, and the creation of a £6 million quick reaction fund to support individuals in need managed by the Services charity. They've been able to spend close to the amount raised, and it's been set up as a wholly trained subsidiary for Help for Heroes Trading Company to sell merchandise and gifts in order to cover their administrative overheads. The money is used for providing much-needed services that aids wounded soldiers' recovery. It funds both capital projects and provides individual support in conjunction with delivering charities. And individuals are encouraged to raise money through activities and fundraising events, whether it's baking cakes, shaving heads, parachuting, walking, cycling, encouraging. It's about encouraging a nation to embrace their own. So, Minister, I propose a unity ticket between the government and the opposition for us to join together to see what we can do in terms of a foundation in Australia to be set up and realised to give the community ownership. I know the support government provides is very good, and the coalition provides welcome and bipartisan support for us. But this is about the community. This is about us giving the community an opportunity to come together and be part of it. I think it's the least we can do as our fighting men and women continue to do what they can to provide peace and security for our nation. Minister, thank you for your update. It is welcome. Thank you for your continued commitment to ensuring the House and indeed the nation is aware of the ongoing operations in Afghanistan.